ever get that feeling like there's got to be something more to teamwork than just, tossing ideas back and forth?
Right.
Well, today we're diving deep into this idea that it might be our own bodies that are playing like a super crucial role in how we actually learn together.
Definitely.
And it's something that we've maybe been overlooking for way too long.
Yeah.
So for this deep dive, we're turning to a fascinating review article called What If We Look at the Body? An Embodied Perspective of Collaborative Learning.
Great article.
Yeah, by Julianne Madureira Ferreira, published in the Educational Psychology Review back in December 2021.
Hmm?
So the big question here, the mission for us today, is really to figure out why this shift in focus away from just the mind and like really considering what our physical selves are up to can reveal, I think, some really surprising insights into how we can learn together better, more effectively.
Absolutely. And I think what's so cool about this article is that it points to some possibilities that are, kind of mind-blowing when you first hear them.
Yeah.
We're talking about the idea that maybe really successful collaboration actually starts with something as basic as just how our bodies move together.
Mm.
Maybe even before we're even having like super complex verbal exchanges.
Right.
And then on top of that, it seems like our physical actions and even the stuff that's going on inside us, like our physiological state, could be some of the secret drivers behind making group learning really, really work.
Okay, so we've got a lot to unpack here. Where do we even start to get a handle on this?
Well, I think a good place to start is to look at how we've traditionally defined collaborative learning.
Hmm.
How have we understood it in the past?
Okay.
So the article points out that often collaborative learning is seen as this coordinated, synchronous activity where we've got a group that's all working towards some shared goals and they're trying to build this common understanding of the problem they're tackling.
Okay.
And that definition actually goes all the way back to the work of Rochelle and Teasley back in 1995.
Okay, so that's that classic picture of a team huddled around a table working on a project or, students in a science lab all focused on the same experiment.
Exactly.
Right.
But what the article really highlights is that the main way we've been analyzing this teamwork has been through what they call cognitivist or social cognitive approaches.
Okay.
So it's been super focused on what's going on inside our heads,
Yeah.
what's happening in the mind.
Right. It's all about the thoughts, the thinking processes, the mental models we're building.
Exactly.
Okay.
And a huge emphasis has been placed on this idea of mind reading,
Okay.
like we're trying to figure out what the other person is thinking, what their intentions are,
Right.
so that we can kind of anticipate their actions and work together smoothly.
Right. So it's like we're constantly trying to decode each other's minds.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because so much of our collaboration depends on being able to understand what others are thinking and planning.
Yeah. And so because of that, there's been a huge emphasis on verbal communication, on those high-level cognitive skills that we use to put our thoughts into words and then understand the words that other people are using.
So it's all about the words we say and the assumptions we make about what those words reveal about each other's thinking.
Right.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Now, the article also talks about this idea of regulations of learning. And I wonder if you could just unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, regulations of learning.
What does that even mean in a group setting?
Yeah, so it's basically about how learners manage their own learning,
Yeah.
and how that extends to when they're learning with other people.
Okay.
So initially, research focused on self-regulation, an individual's ability to kind of think about their own learning, set goals, manage their progress.
So metacognition, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like thinking about thinking.
Yeah.
And there were these pioneers in this field, people like Zimmerman, Pinchuk, Wynne, who really laid the groundwork for understanding self-regulation. But then as research progressed, the focus broadened to look at the group dynamics.
Right, because we rarely learn in complete isolation.
Exactly.
So how does that change things?
Well, you start to consider things like co-regulation, where, say, a teacher or even just a more knowledgeable peer is kind of guiding the learning process.
Okay, so there's some scaffolding happening there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then you have socially shared regulation of learning, or SSRL, where the whole group, the members collectively, are managing their journey together.
So it's like a shared responsibility for how the learning is progressing.
Yeah, like a more distributed kind of regulation.
I see.
And the article points out that these later models, especially this SSRL, started to really acknowledge the importance of context and social interaction. How the environment and the people around us influence how we learn.
Right, because learning isn't happening in a vacuum.
Exactly.
But I'm still curious, where does the body, our physical body, actually fit into all of these models?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And The article argues that in these traditional models, the body is often seen as kind of secondary. It's almost like a vehicle that carries our thoughts and intentions, which are mostly expressed through language.
Okay.
So things like our gestures, our posture, our facial expressions, all those nonverbal cues are often just seen as supporting actors.
Mhm.
They're not the main event.
Right, so they're there to kind of reinforce the cognitive processes that are happening in the brain and being communicated through speech.
Yeah, exactly. The body is just along for the ride, not really essential to the core process of learning together.
Okay, but then the article takes a sharp turn and introduces this concept of embodied cognition.
Ah, yes, embodied cognition, or EC as they call it.
Right.
And this feels like a real paradigm shift.
It is a huge shift.
What's the essence of this idea?
Well, the fundamental principle of embodied cognition is that our brain and our body aren't these separate entities.
Okay.
They're deeply intertwined, they're connected. And it goes further and proposes that our physical experiences, the actions we take, and our sensory motor systems, how we perceive the world and how we move through it, these are actually fundamental to how we think and learn.
So it's not just that our brain is getting information from the body, but that the body is actively shaping how we think and understand.
Exactly.
Wow.
The brain's interaction with the environment is always happening through the body.
Yeah, okay.
We're not just these passive absorbers of information.
Mm.
Our physical presence in the world and how we interact with the world directly shapes how we make sense of things.
That's a powerful concept.
It
So
is.
it's not just about having a brain in a vat, it's about the whole embodied experience.
Right, and the article even goes into the spectrum of different EC theories.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
you have kind of moderate views like the one put forward by Goldman,
Okay.
where our sensor motor systems are seen as like an important part of cognition.
Mm.
But then you have more radical views like Gallagher's perspective, which argues that cognition is fundamentally shaped by the body's ongoing interaction with the environment.
So it's not just a part of it, it's like the very foundation.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big difference in how we think about thinking.
It is a huge shift.
So within this embodied cognition framework, what are some of the key ideas that the article highlights as being particularly relevant for how we understand collaborative learning?
Well, one of the really important ones is the theory of embodied simulation.
Okay.
And this is really closely tied to the discovery of mirror neurons.
Oh yeah, I've heard of mirror neurons, but remind me how they work again.
So the basic idea is that when we observe someone doing something, to performing an action, it can actually activate similar neural pathways in our own brains as if we were doing the action ourselves.
So just by watching you lift that cup, my brain is almost like rehearsing that action itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this simulation could be a crucial way that we understand other people's intentions and their actions without needing like a detailed verbal explanation.
So it's like a direct understanding that bypasses language.
Right. It's a deeper nonverbal understanding.
That's fascinating.
And a lot of the research in this area is associated with Gallese and Rizzolatti.
Okay. And what other key EC theories does the article bring up?
It also touches on this idea of extended or situated cognition.
Okay, I've heard of that too, but remind me what that's all about.
So this idea, which was really championed by thinkers like Clark and Chalmers, argues that our cognitive processes aren't limited to what's going on inside our physical bodies.
Okay.
They can actually extend outward into the environment and into the tools that we use.
So it's like our minds are leaking out into the world around us.
In a way, yeah, and in a collaborative context, this could even mean that other people become part of our cognitive process as we're working together.
So my teammate isn't just someone I'm communicating with, they're like an extension of my own thinking process.
That's the idea.
Wow, that really stretches the traditional boundaries of where we think cognition is happening.
It does. And the article emphasizes that this is a very different view from that classical cognitive science perspective.
Right, the one where the brain is like a computer processing symbols
Exactly.
in isolation.
Yeah, embodied cognition brings our sensorimotor experiences back into the foreground.
Yeah.
It says that these experiences are fundamental to how we make sense of the world and interact with each other.
So it's not just abstract symbols, it's about the whole messy embodied experience of being in the world.
Right, and this opens up a whole bunch of new ways to analyze all those nonverbal behaviors, the subtle physiological changes, and the overall dynamics of collaboration.
So we're shifting from just analyzing the words that are being spoken to looking at the whole physical experience of collaborating.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's dive into that a bit more. The article then goes into the body's specific role in social interactions.
Right.
Can you give us some examples of how our physical states and actions can actually influence how we connect and work with other people?
Yeah, there are some fascinating examples in the article. So, for instance, there's research that suggests that our posture can actually influence our mood.
Really?
Yeah, and that in turn can affect how we interact with others.
So if I'm slouching, I might be more likely to be withdrawn or less engaged with my teammates.
Right, exactly.
Interesting.
And then there's this idea of facial feedback.
Okay.
So the expressions that we make on our faces can actually impact our social judgments and our tendency to want to engage with other people.
So if I'm smiling, I'm more likely to perceive my teammates as friendly and approachable.
Exactly.
And if I'm frowning, I might be more likely to see them as, maybe a little bit threatening or untrustworthy.
Right.
Wow, so even these subtle facial expressions can have a big impact on how we perceive and interact with each other.
Yeah, and then there's research that shows that even the simple act of anticipating a giant physical action, like let's say lifting something heavy together,
Okay.
that can influence how we perceive the task itself and even our partner's capabilities.
So if I believe we're going to be working together on something physical, it can change my perception of the task and my teammate before we even start.
Exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
It is, and it suggests that our perceptual systems are kind of actively tuned to guiding our interactions within the environment.
Hmm.
And this is especially true for social interactions.
So it's not just about passively observing what others are doing. It's about anticipating shared outcomes and understanding their abilities in relation to those outcomes.
Right, and that's obviously crucial for effective collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what about communication?
Mm,
We usually think of communication as being primarily verbal, but the article really highlights the importance of nonverbal communication and collaboration, doesn't it?
it absolutely does. Nonverbal communication is so crucial.
Okay.
So think about something as basic as how we take turns speaking in a group.
Right.
It's not just about waiting for someone to finish their sentence. Nonverbal cues like eye contact, subtle shifts in posture, hand gestures, all these things play a huge role in synchronizing those interactions.
So we're constantly sending and receiving signals that help us to navigate those conversations smoothly.
Exactly. And the article mentions some really interesting research on things like body sway.
Body sway.
Yeah, so it turns out that people in conversation often tend to sway in these surprisingly synchronized patterns.
Really?
Yeah, and they also found synchronized eye movements when people are deeply engaged in solving a problem together.
So our bodies are literally moving in harmony sometimes when we're working together.
It seems that way.
That's a fascinating image, and I remember the article also talked about physiological synchrony in collaborative groups.
Yes, this is a really cutting-edge area of research.
Okay, what have they found?
Well, studies have shown that individuals working together can actually exhibit synchronized physiological responses.
What kind of responses are we talking about?
Things like changes in skin conductance or heart rate variability.
So, like, our bodies are literally syncing up on a physiological level.
It seems that way.
Wow.
And this physiological synchrony appears to be linked to the quality of the collaboration, how well they perform on the task,
Yeah.
and even their reported levels of engagement and learning.
So it's not just about being in the same room or talking to each other. It's about our bodies aligning on this deeper, often unconscious level.
Right. It's like there's this hidden layer of communication happening beneath our conscious awareness.
That's really remarkable. Now, what about gestures? I always thought of gestures as just kind of adding emphasis to what we're saying.
Right.
But the article suggests that they're much more than that.
Yeah. The article explains that gestures can function as what's called material scaffolding.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means they can actually help us offload some of the cognitive demands of a task, and they can facilitate shared understanding in really powerful ways.
So instead of just being add-ons to speech, they're actually helping us to think and understand together.
Exactly. They create this shared space for expressing and exploring ideas. It's almost like extending our thoughts into the physical realm and making them visible and tangible to our collaborators.
So it's not just about what we're saying, it's about how we're using our bodies to shape and share those ideas.
Right, and researchers like Golden Meadow and Walkington have shown how collaborative gesturing can even help learners grasp and extend complex mathematical reasoning.
Really?
Yeah, think about explaining a complex shape with your hands.
Right.
You're not just describing it, you're actively shaping the idea in the shared space between you and the other person.
So our bodies aren't just passive recipients or simple transmitters of our thoughts. They're actively and fundamentally involved in how we think, learn, and connect with others in these collaborative settings.
Absolutely.
This embodied cognition perspective really does offer a new lens through which to view teamwork.
It certainly does. And the article then moves on to exploring new avenues for investigating collaborative learning through this EC framework. And it organizes this exploration around two key perspectives.
Okay.
One is embodied learning during the process of knowledge construction.
Okay.
And the other is the embodied experience of intersubjectivity.
So how we build knowledge together and how we experience that shared understanding and connection.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's start with embodied learning.
Go ahead.
What kind of new questions or research directions does this EC perspective open up when we consider how we actually build knowledge together in groups?
Well, the fundamental questions kind of shift from, how is an individual regulating their learning to how is our body actually constituting collaborative learning as it happens? And how can we learn to be better collaborators from an embodied perspective?
So we're not just looking at the individual mind anymore. We're looking at the whole embodied system
Exactly.
and how that system interacts with other embodied systems.
Right.
Okay.
And the article points to some exciting research possibilities using technologies like eye tracking to understand where individuals are focusing their attention during collaborative tasks.
So like where our gaze is directed can reveal a lot about what we're paying attention to and how we're processing information.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And then there's pupillometry, which measures those subtle changes in pupil dilation.
Okay.
And those changes can indicate the intensity of someone's cognitive and emotional processing.
So like if my pupils get bigger, it means I'm working harder or I'm more emotionally engaged.
Right, exactly.
That's fascinating.
And this can give us really fine-grained insights into what aspects of the collaboration are maybe more demanding or more emotionally salient.
So it's like we're getting a window into the inner workings of the collaborative process.
Exactly.
I remember the article also emphasized the need for more research into our physiological states during collaboration.
It did. It really highlighted the need to explore the relationship between our physiological states. So things like heart rate variability, skin conducts hormonal responses,
Okay.
and how these states relate to how we engage in different aspects of group tasks.
Like whether we're monitoring progress, generating ideas, resolving conflicts.
Right. And this really requires an interdisciplinary approach, bringing together psychologists, neuroscientists, and even physiologists to integrate all these different levels of data.
So it's a much more complex picture than just looking at what people are saying.
Definitely.
Now let's go back to this idea of extended cognition in a collaborative setting.
Okay.
How does the embodied perspective shed more light on that?
Well, if we accept that our cognitive processes can extend into our environment,
Right.
then in collaborative learning, the other members of the group become a crucial part of that environment. They can essentially become extensions of our own cognitive abilities, helping us to store, process, and retrieve information in ways we couldn't do alone.
So it's like our minds are linking up or working in a more interconnected way than we traditionally thought.
Right, and this offers a completely new way to think about cognitive load in collaboration. It's not just about distributing tasks among individuals.
Right.
It's about recognizing that the cognitive load can actually be integrated across individuals through our interactions in our shared environment.
So it's a more fluid, dynamic system.
Exactly.
Now, the second key perspective the article discusses is the embodied experience of intersubjectivity.
Right.
Can you unpack that a bit more for us?
So this shifts the focus to how we experience interacting with others and how that shared felt experience contributes to our learning together.
Okay.
And while traditional approaches often treat emotions and cognitions as somewhat separate,
Right.
the embodied view sees collaboration as this more fundamentally relational process.
Okay.
And the article brings in the enactive approach here, which draws on the work of thinkers like Gallagher and Lindgren and de Jager and de Paulo.
Okay.
And this perspective really emphasizes what they call participatory sense-making.
Participatory sense-making.
Yeah, so it's about how we actively act and interact with each other to create shared meaning and understanding in the moment.
So it's not just about individual learners regulating their own learning or even the group regulating each other's contributions.
Right.
It's about understanding the dynamics of the entire interaction itself.
Exactly. It's about diving into how individuals participate in joint actions and the really intricate dynamics of embodied coordination. So instead of just focusing on whether one person can regulate another person's behavior, the central question becomes, what does it take for us to successfully participate in this joint activity together?
And that could involve things like coordinating our movements, responding to nonverbal cues, even experiencing those shared emotional states that help us to connect and understand each other.
Exactly.
Now, what kind of research methods are best suited for studying this embodied experience of intersubjectivity and collaborative learning?
Well, the article mentions things like conversation analysis,
Okay.
which allows researchers to really examine the fine-grained structure of those social interactions. And then there's dynamical systems theory, which can help us model the patterns of coordination that emerge and evolve over time within a group.
So we're looking at the system as a whole and how it changes over time.
Exactly.
And are there any new neuroscience techniques that are being used in this area?
Yeah, there's growing potential for using dual scanning neuroscience techniques.
What are those?
So these techniques allow researchers to simultaneously study the brain activity of multiple people as they interact with each other.
So we can actually see what's happening in the brains of two people who are collaborating.
Right, and this could reveal a lot about the neural underpinnings of shared understanding and coordination.
That's amazing. The article also made a point about how this embodied perspective could broaden our understanding of collaboration across different groups of people.
Yes, it really opens up the field.
How so?
Well, the enactive approach, by not relying so heavily on assumptions about sophisticated verbal communication and mind-reading abilities,
Right.
it allows us to study collaboration in groups who might interact in different ways,
Okay, so for example,
like very young children or individuals with certain disabilities.
because they might rely more on nonverbal communication or different forms of interaction.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. And it also raises questions about how cultural differences in nonverbal communication styles might shape collaboration.
It absolutely does.
Because if collaboration isn't solely about talking and thinking in the same way, but also deeply involves how we move, gesture, and interact physically, then those cultural norms around those embodied behaviors could really impact group dynamics and learning outcomes.
Right, and the article concludes by emphasizing that this embodied cognition perspective isn't about throwing out all the traditional views of collaborative learning.
Okay.
It's about offering a valuable, complementary, and potentially much deeper level of understanding.
So it's about adding another layer to our understanding,
Uh-huh.
one that takes into account the whole body and how we physically engage with each other in the process of learning together.
Exactly.
The article also touches on some of the practical implications of this for education and how we teach collaborative skills.
It does, and it suggests that if we recognize that collaborative skills are so intimately linked with our bodies and how we interact physically,
Right.
then we might need to rethink how we design learning environments and activities to better cultivate these embodied collaborative skills. And maybe we should be doing this from a very young age.
So instead of just putting students into groups and saying, okay, collaborate,
Right.
we need to be much more mindful of how their bodies are interacting and actively create opportunities for them to engage in positive and productive embodied collaboration.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. But the article does acknowledge that there are still some challenges in researching these embodied aspects of learning.
Yes, there are definitely challenges.
What are some of those challenges?
Well, studying this complex interplay between verbal and nonverbal communication, subtle physiological states, and the surrounding environment.
Right.
It presents some significant methodological challenges. It often requires us to integrate different types of data, physiological measurements, video recordings, audio recordings, even subjective reports from the learners themselves.
So it's a much more intricate puzzle to piece together.
It is, but it's a puzzle that could unlock some really rich and nuanced insights into how we learn and work together.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the most significant takeaway from this exploration of embodied cognition and collaborative learning?
I think the core takeaway is that understanding the role of the body offers a much richer and more nuanced perspective on how we learn together. It has the potential to reveal aspects of collaboration that traditional cognitive approaches, those that have focused mainly on verbal communication and individual mental processes, might completely miss.
Right, because we've been so focused on the mind that we've neglected the body.
Exactly, and we're talking about things like the foundational importance of basic bodily coordination, the subtle but powerful influence of nonverbal cues and physiological synchrony, and this overarching understanding that collaborative learning is fundamentally an embodied and interactive experience.
So it's like we've only been looking at one part of the picture
Right.
by focusing solely on the words.
Yeah.
Considering the body as integral to the process opens up this whole new realm of understanding how we truly connect and learn with others.
It does.
So, for you, the listener, here's a final thought to ponder. If our ability to collaborate effectively is so deeply intertwined with our bodies and how we interact physically, how might we fundamentally redesign our learning environments and activities, starting from a young age, to better foster and nurture these essential embodied collaborative skills?
It's a really important question to consider.
It is, and we encourage you to delve further into the research on embodied cognition and collaborative learning. It's a fascinating and rapidly evolving field that offers some groundbreaking new avenues for understanding human interaction and how we learn best together.
I agree.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.